Hi, hello, howdy. Uh, Today I'm going to be presenting you Dr. Henschel and the rest of the class with the critical assignment for week 8, which is my gait and development presentation. So here we go. Here's my name. Critical assignments up here. We're obviously the School of Health Sciences, Kin 332BE, Lifelong Motor Development is the class. Dr. Henschel is my professor, Dr. Kathy Henschel, and December 23rd, 2022. Okay, so toddler. Yay, toddlers. Alright. As you can see, this is a child who's walking, who's has his right foot forward and his left foot cocked back. Probably the initial swing. He's relatively wide-based. Obviously, his legs are at least shoulder width apart. So yeah, there's that. And then so like the base of the support is generally wider based for toddlers. Obviously it's because they are young. It's like their first time walking in the physical world, and they need a little bit more stability. Obviously that's why they sometimes don't swing their arms, they do this. Keep them above their waist. And stride length obviously is not very long and short, and it's more lateral. So yeah, there's that. Alright, so their mid stance obviously is very, I don't want to say removed, but it is very limited in the fact that they're still growing into their bodies and their brains are still developing. Yeah, and the mid swing and the terminal stances and all the different swings. So childhood, the child seems to have a little bit more mature gait in the video. In terms of the gait cycle, he can kind of bipedal motion, he can walk forward. It's just a little wobbly and not completely linear and somewhat lateral. But the effects or the process, you can see that they're learning and that they're maturing. Okay, so the childhood first slide right here. Obviously, their base of support is slightly less, or is a lot, or somewhat less wide than the toddler, because they're grown into their bodies more and they kind of understand where they are in their headspace in terms of space and time. So they can walk a little bit more linear, but still they walk a little bit more to the side because their body's still developing, and sometimes their ankles will either invert or evert because their bones are still growing and whatnot. Yeah. Alright, so also you can see things such as their mid stance and their terminal stance and their pre-swing, but they're still not fully developed, and there's still aspects of those missing that aren't fully complete. Okay, so the adulthood gait is the most succinct and complete out of all the 4 groups. The 4 groups are toddlers, children, or child, adult, and old adult or older adult. The adult gait completes every step in the gait and cycle and doesn't miss anything. And it seems like everyone's gait, every adult human being's gait, has something a little wrong. So one thing I noticed that might have been slightly off is when he would swing his leg forward, his knee would be a little bent, and that's not completely normal because you want to have it as straight as possible, but no one's gait is perfect. Okay, so for the adult, continued. His base support was good. It wasn't very wide. It was shoulder width or less. His stride length was okay. His arm swing was superb. He swung his arms in order to keep his forward momentum, and it probably helped with his balance. And then you could see visible initial contact and loading response. So the adult fulfilled the requirements of mid stands, terminal stands, pre-swing, initial swing, and late mid swing, and you could see it visibly in the adult. And I noted it down right here, obviously with times too. So the late adult human being, this was an interesting one because in a sense it's like they kind of reverted back to their state of being a child, but not really. In terms, I'm not talking about maturity, but in terms of the way they walk, because their gait became less complete than the adult. So this person took very relatively short steps in the video. She was an older African American female. She kind of shuffled her feet back and forth, forward, posterior, and anterior, but not too far forward or back. And it took this person a longer amount of time to travel from point A to B. And I noticed that this person had kyphosis in their shoulders, which means it's kind of shrunk forward, and her back wasn't straight. So yeah, and obviously sometimes things like that happen due with older age. So the late adult continued. So our basic support was tighter, or I would say awesome, better than the older adult, or the younger adult male that was walking. And it was even less wide than her hips, which was kind of interesting. The stride length was very short and did not have heel-to-toe gait. The arm swing was somewhat visible, but not as pronounced. And then obviously the initial contact loading phase was very little and hardly noticeable. Her mid-stands, you could see it, but her feet were kind of shuffling, and it seemed like her foot that was lifting off the ground was kind of dragging. Her terminal stance was not very noticeable, and it seemed to not have heel-to-toe connection, or very rarely. Pre-swing, initial swing, there's that, and the initial swing mid-stage was very hard to notice, but I did notice it a little bit in the middle, or beginning the middle part of the video. She did swing, I believe it was her left foot, and you could see it drag. Late mid-swing, terminal swing. You could see some heel-to-toe connection, but it wasn't full, and it wasn't as pronounced as the adult male. And here are my references, and I just wanted to take the time to say thank you very much for this being the professor of this class and instructing it. And thank you, and I hope you and the class have a wonderful Christmas. Thank you.